There is a garden, there is a city, and there's a kingdom of God. And it is beautiful, and He is bringing it right now into our midst. Well, leadership is a really big word, lots of different definitions. One of the ones that I've liked about leadership is by an author, Max Dupree, and he says the first task of a leader is to define reality. The last thing a leader does is to say thank you, and then in between, the leader is a servant. And I think this idea of leader as a servant is a good starting point for leadership. Now, we're living in a time when public confidence in leadership just seems to get lower every year. People don't trust leaders, no matter what sphere of society that they are in. And yet, I think we would all agree that we think leadership is more important than ever. We might even use the words critical or crucial to describe leadership. So why is it that we believe leadership is so important that we would spend 6 weeks talking about it on Sunday mornings?
Because we live in a time when there's such a critical need of leadership, we have an opportunity as leaders to begin to give people an imagination for something different. And I think that's what leaders do, is they paint a different vision of what the future can be, and that's desperately needed right now.
And here's the situation. We either lead well or we lead poorly. There's nothing in between. And we see today a lot of poor leadership. And so there is sort of this crisis that's coming, and we need to step up and lead well.
It's funny how enduring that crisis is, because there's a phrase in the book of Judges that says that there was no king in Israel, and so the people did what was right in their own eyes. And I think we see that now. There's a vacuum of leadership all over the place, whether it's in our families, our communities, or across our country.
When I read through the stories in Scripture, it's pretty obvious that every time God wants to launch something new, every time there's a crisis, something that needs to be really addressed, God goes out looking for the leader that He's going to call, He's going to raise up, and then He's going to send out to do the stuff that needs to be done.
And fundamentally, a leader helps a group of people get to specific ends or specific goals, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I think that's really key, is because leaders don't do everything themselves, but they equip people. And so good leaders are collaborative. Good leaders empower people with resources and vision and authority to accomplish those ends.
And then for Christian leadership specifically, it's about getting to kingdom ends and kingdom purposes. And that always includes both service and sacrifice by the leader.
So whether we're doing it right here in the church, whether we're out there in the community as leaders, whether we're in the homes or whether in our places of work, all these kinds of things are just what leaders have to do. So we have 6 weeks we're going to devote to leadership. What would we love to see happen at the end of those 6 weeks?
The church exists for the good of the world, and I believe that Living Word wants to be for the good of this community. You know, the reality is that people are living into and out of their fears right now. And this is a great opportunity for the people of God to help people live into the hope of God's kingdom.
We want to see many, many more leaders raised up and empowered. And so we do that through creating pathways, creating communities, small communities and mid-sized communities where leaders can learn and grow and develop. And that's going to be crucial, and you'll see a lot of that this fall that will start.
For 40 years, by God's grace, Living Word has been a community that has really had a good influence on this entire county. And I think right now we're positioned, we have a season coming that we're going to be able to make an even greater, more beautiful influence. And there's a phrase we just use a lot around Living Word, and that is helping the people we love flourish. And that's at the heart of leadership. Leaders want to help the people they love flourish. So the conversation on leadership begins today, and we're going to begin by going back to the beginning. We're going back to the book of Genesis, and we're going to see how God created leadership in the very beginning, and He said it was good, it was very good. Yeah, good morning, church. How you guys doing today? Beautiful, beautiful weekend we're having. A special welcome to those who are over in the Life Center. Thanks for being over there and a part of that community. We had a great time over there at 8 o'clock today. And again, just glad you guys are over there. And also to our live stream audience, we have a growing number of people who are watching live stream. I just love hearing thoughts from people when they're back from vacation. They're talking about they were able to watch and stay in touch with things even while they were away. So we're just really glad you guys are here as we are beginning a 6-week series on leadership. And here's what I hope you're going to have a sense, and that is God is inviting you into a new season of influence and expansion of your influence in the lives of the people that you love. One of the things that we're absolutely convinced about is whatever you spend some time working on, whatever you focus on, expands. So we have about the next 40 days where we're going to focus on leadership, and I believe that as you focus on leadership, you'll find your leadership capacity is expanding and growing, and actually there's some significant change and development that takes place. So just get really, really excited about what the next 6 weeks will have for us as we're in this leadership series. We are also doing something new with this series, and we're going to probably continue to do it in the future, and that is every time we begin a new series, we want to get a particular resource that is available for those who would like to just go a little more, dig a little deeper. And so for this series, we have a particular book, and it's called In the Name of Jesus. Now, mine is the old copy, and you'll see the new version up there. But this is a short little book. It's it's about 80 pages, written by Henry Nouwen. It's a wonderful little book that if you'd like to go a little deeper in leadership, you'll be able to pick those up out there at the next steps. Now, you just can't pick one up and run away. You're going to have to pay for it. But we do have a whole bunch of copies, and if for some reason we would run out, we'll be sure to get more copies. But if you want to go a little deeper, you'll really, really enjoy that. And we're going to try and do that for all the future series. If we can find a nice, very accessible resource for you to go a little deeper, we're going to make those available for you. Well, we are talking about leadership, and let me just begin with this question. And so, how many of you guys you see yourself as a leader? Just go ahead and raise your hand if you see yourself as a leader. Okay, now here's what just happened. You felt a little awkward if you are a leader raising your hand to identify yourself as a leader. Doesn't that feel a little awkward? Hey, if you're a leader out there, raise your hand shoots up, and what are people going to think? I raised my hand because I think I'm a leader. Now here's the other thing. There's a whole bunch of you that you would not have raised your hand because you think, well, there's no way that I can be a leader, because leaders are those people who are doing really big things. They're leading big organizations. They're doing heroic things. There are very significant challenges that they are involved in, and they're having this impact and influence that goes really, really far, and I'm not one of those people, and so therefore I can't raise my hand. Now, certainly there are those leaders who are positioned in those kinds of places to have that kind of influence and that kind of impact, but most of us are positioned in much smaller places where we can have this slow, steady, consistent, always for the good of others influence that's just making their lives better. That's frankly where most of us are at, and I hope that every one of us, no matter whether you are at a place of kind of big leadership or if you're at a place where the influence is a little bit smaller and more confined, you're going to have a sense that you are moving into a new place where you are making a difference in the lives of the people that you love. So leadership is a pretty big word, and we're going to unpack that in just a moment. Let me give you a high-altitude view of what we're going to do in the next 6 weeks. We're going to understand that leadership was once very, very good. Then it was no longer good. In fact, it became pretty bad. And then Jesus is making it good all over once more. So it was good, then it was not good, and it's becoming good once again. In the Christian language, we talk about this as a worldview, and at Living Word, we like to use the language of creation, fall, redemption, and then the renewal of all things. We're going to spend 1 week, that's today, looking at in the beginning, God created everything and said everything was good, including leadership. I'm going to unpack what it meant to have this really good in the beginning kind of leadership. Then we're going to spend 2 weeks looking at what sin has done to leadership, and the bad news is that sin has done a lot of damage to something that was originally very, very good. We're going to spend 2 weeks looking at that. And then we're going to finish with 3 weeks looking at what God has been doing to redeem what sin has ruined and what was supposed to be for the flourishing of the world. And we're going to see that God was first doing some things through the nation of Israel to redeem leadership. And then when that wasn't tracking the way it needed to, he sent his only son, Jesus, to do this amazing thing, which is why we're calling this whole series, Lead, Love, Serve in the Way of Jesus. And now, through the church for the last 2,000 years, Jesus is continuing to send you and I out in the world to redeem all that is broken and repair all that is hurting and lead in some beautiful ways. And so that's kind of what our series is going to be, this overview, creation, fall, redemption. Now, we do have to get started talking a little bit about the definition of leadership, but for that end, what I like to do is, in the beginning, it was very, very good. Let's try and get a sense of what it was like in the beginning. My desired outcome for today is that you would have this motivated vision, a more than ever before, of how God can use your leadership influence in your personal sphere, maybe in this region called York, and maybe even in some strategic places around the world. That you're just going to have this beautiful, fired up, motivational vision and energy for what God can do through you. So Genesis in the beginning, well, I'm not actually going to look at Genesis chapter 1 and 2 today. What I want to do is I want to look at several of the Psalms, because there are many psalmists that they are theologically, spiritually reflecting on Genesis chapter 1 and 2, what God did in the beginning. And there's going to be three different Psalms I want to look at. One is going to be the longest, and that is Psalm chapter 8. And let me read this. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. The psalmist begins with this praise of God the Creator, God the Lord Almighty. You have set your glory in the heavens. We jump down to verse 3, about these heavens. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set into place. Now, he's gotten real cosmic, but now he's going to get very, very personal. What is mankind that you are mindful of us? Human beings that you care for us. You have made us a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned us with glory and honor. As the psalmist has considered, first of all, the almighty creator God, and then this amazing creation called the universe that he has made, the gaze has shifted from out there to up close and personal, looking at who we are, and he is just overcome with wonder and worship. He continues in verse 6, you have made us rulers over the works of your hands. God, all this amazing world that you created, you made us rulers over all of this. You have put everything under our feet, flocks and herds, the animals of the wild, the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, all that swim, the paths of the sea. And it concludes, Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. I mean, that's just good reflecting on Genesis chapter 1 and 2. There is a creator God. He's made everything. He's made us, and he has invested you and I with the capacity to rule over this beautiful world that he has made. In Psalm 24, verse 1, we read just real short, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who are living in it. I mean, so literally everything belongs to God. It all belongs to him. But what I'd like to do is I want to shift over to one of the later Psalms, Psalm 115, and listen to just these two verses. May the Lord cause you to flourish. There's that word. It's my second favorite word that I like to use. Grace is my first favorite. Flourish is the second. There's a deep connection between grace and flourishing. May the Lord cause you to flourish, both you and your children. May you be blessed by the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Now, you remember last week when we finished up our Disruptive Prayer series, I want to say there are three prayers that we should wind up praying. The first is thank you, thank you, thank you. And the second is help me, help me, help me. And the third is wow, the wonder of worship. I think here we could add a fourth one, bless you, bless you, bless you. As a prayer that we can pray, bless you, bless you, bless you. The Lord bless you. What we're saying that is we are invoking, we are wanting God to bring to bear into your life all of his power, love, resources, generosity, all that belongs to him. Bless you, Lord. Lord, bless you with those kinds of things. Wonderful, wonderful prayer to add to our repertoire of prayer. Bless you so that you would flourish. Now here's verse 16. The highest heaven belongs to the Lord. The highest heavens, they belong to the Lord. But now look at this. The earth he has given to mankind. Now remember, in chapter 24, verse 1, the earth belongs to the Lord and all that is in it, the world and all that's in it, it belongs to Jesus. But here we're saying he has given it to mankind. What is going on here? And what's going on here is this really rich word called stewardship. Stewardship is Genesis chapter 1 and 2. Stewardship is Psalm 8, Psalm 24, Psalm 115, and so many more. It all belongs to God, but God has entrusted it into our care. He has placed it into our possession so that we will do with what he has given us according to his will. And in the Psalms, and we'll actually be looking at this passage later on in the series, there's one individual above all in the Psalms who did that so well, and it is King David. And we read in one of the Psalms that God actually took David from being a shepherd of sheep, very humble beginnings. He calls David his servant, shepherd of sheep, and he took him from those humble beginnings, brought him and placed him over the nation of Israel. But he was very clear to David, I am placing you as the shepherd over my people Israel. David, they're not your people, they're mine. They're mine. I love them, but I love them so much I am entrusting them into your care for you to take care of, protect, nurture, grow, develop, expand, improve. David, they are now your responsibility. But David, never forget they belong to me. Living word, let's never forget the earth and all it contains belongs to God, but he has placed amazingly with generosity and love and discipline and wisdom, he has placed it into our care to do something very, very good with it. That is what leaders are passionate about, being stewards. Now, over the years, I have collected definitions of leadership. In fact, I've read a lot, and I have a list, probably 30 or 40 different definitions of leadership. Leadership is like the elephant, It's so big that no matter what vantage point you look at the elephant, you're going to have a slightly different view and therefore a slightly different definition. So there's lots and lots of definitions. It is a big word. But there are folks who, in the past, have actually said, well, Pastor Brian, I really don't think the Bible talks about leadership. And they were right. If you would have looked at, for example, the 1982-84 translation of the New International Version, if you would have looked cover to cover, you would have only found the word leadership used a couple of times in that particular NIV translation. And the older translations, they did not use the word leadership. Now, by the way, there is an updated translation of the New International Version. It was done in 2011. And in that particular translation, the word leader, leaders, leading, leadership occurs hundreds of times. But in the old translations, the word wasn't used very often. So people could read those and come away with the sense, well, the Bible just isn't interested in leadership. Now, the Bible then, and all the translations, talks about service all the time. And so some people say, Brian, listen, stop talking about leadership and start talking about service. In fact, don't even talk about servant leadership, just talk about service. But that's a complete misunderstanding of the biblical view. The Bible talks about leadership all the time. Even before they started using the words for it, they just used other words. The Bible uses words like authorities and rulers and there's positions and roles of leadership. There are pharaohs, there are kings, there are queens, there are governors, there are generals, there are centurions, there are prophets, there are priests, there are high priests, there are judges, there are ruling elders, there are teaching elders. You get to the New Testament, there are these entrepreneurial type folks. We call them apostles. And there are churches who have been given deacons and elders and shepherd pastors to have some kind of leadership influence. The Bible is filled with the talk about leadership, even in some of the older translations when it didn't use the exact word leader, but of course today they do. I just want to say from beginning to end, the Bible is deeply concerned about leadership and very passionately excited about good leadership and very, very cautious about bad leadership. Now, as we are looking at this thing called leadership, though, if we want to understand the very essence of leadership, there's two words we have to understand. One is the word power, and the other is the word authority. Here's what I mean by the word power. Power is when you have the ability to actually do something. You have the capacity, the capability, you have the energy, you have the resources of skill, knowledge, wisdom, experience, expertise. Power means you have the capacity to do something. I had a chance to talk with a friend who was in the hospital for some heart surgery. He had 5 bypasses. Now, that's a lot of bypasses. And he said the good news was my surgeon has done 8,000 heart surgeries. Yeah, so that surgeon has a lot of power, a lot of capacity, a lot of ability to do something really, really well. I would be a little different if I had to go in for some heart surgery and the doctor looks at me and says, hey, Brian, good news, you're my first ever. Now, give me somebody with some more power to do this thing. I just got something crossed off my bucket list yesterday. I went and had my first ever MRI test, and they put you real tight and they put you in that really small, confined, narrow, dark, noisy place. But it was actually kind of interesting. And so I'm always talking to technicians. So tell me a little bit about this and what's going on, because I'm always interested in the expertise and the knowledge and the wisdom and the skill that people have. There's a kind of a power that they have. So that's power, is when you have the ability to do something. But then there is authority. And authority is when you have the right to do something. You have been authorized to use your power in a particular way. You have a position or role that allows you to carry out what it is that you are being tasked to do. So power and authority. Now, ideally, power and authority should go together. So, for example, policemen, the traffic authorities, they have the ability to stop and direct traffic. You can stop, you can let them go, you can ship. And so, therefore, on Sunday mornings, we have a police officer on most Sunday mornings out there on Bell Road, and they are directing traffic. And I tell you, they get a lot more authority than if Pastor Brian was out there just trying to direct traffic. I would probably be lying on the road run over because I don't have enough authority. Power and authority, they're the two words that are at the essence of all leadership. Now, ideally, power and authority should go together, but sometimes you have power and you don't have authority. Now, that can be really frustrating if you have power, but you're not authorized to use it. Sometimes you actually are in a position of authority and you don't have the power to do that very well. You feel a little bit incompetent. You feel a little bit like a poser. And sometimes you have neither power or authority. I was down in, I taught this, some of these concepts about 2 years ago at a place down in Brazil, and had a nice group of pastors and leaders there. And I was, in the first day before I really got to know them, I'm talking about power and authority. And I said, hey, let me give you an example. So I just picked a student at random and said, I have the power to go up and punch you in the nose, but I have no authority to do that. And so therefore I'd get in trouble if I wound up using the power I had to do something I'm not authorized to do. And they got that. Later on during the break, another student came up, talks in very, very impeccable English, and he said, I really like this distinction you're making between power and authority, but I want to let you know you were wrong on something. I said, what's that? He said, not only do you not have authority to punch him in the nose, you don't have the power to do that either. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that person is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master. Yeah, sometimes you don't have power or authority. Okay, let me give you another illustration. I'm just using, don't take this in any wrong way. I probably have the power to be the lead pastor of any church in your county. I've got the knowledge, the abilities, the expertise, the experience, the perspective. But I am authorized to be the lead pastor of only one. See the difference? Power is the ability. Authority is the invitation into a role or responsibility from which to lead. Good leadership lives with both power and authority. Okay, you're tracking with me so far about this thing called leadership. Now, any other definitions we add about leadership, they're just going to be supplemental to this issue of power and authority. Good leaders are those who use their power and authority in appropriate, right, healthy ways. That's what we're talking about today. Bad leadership is when you misuse or abuse your power and authority, and therefore you wind up hurting and harming people. That's what we're going to look at next week. There's a lot of good leadership in the world. There's a lot of bad leadership in the world as well. Now, I want to take this concept of power and authority to one deeper level so you really, really understand that. And that is all power and authority, it comes from a source. It has a particular purpose, and it also has a nature or a flavor about it. Let me talk first about the purpose of power and authority. We've been using this language multiple times. The purpose of all leadership is the flourishing of those we love. God has given power and authority to you and I. He has entrusted power and authority into our care so that we would use it for the sake of the people we love. It is for the flourishing of the world, whether it's the big wide world or whether it is just your little, corner, nook, and cranny. Power and authority exists so that you can help others flourish. So about 2.5 years ago, when I was sort of wrestling through the call upon my life and the invitation for me to pursue becoming the lead pastor of Living Word, I just want to say, honestly, the biggest question I was asking myself was this: do I have the power to help the people I love flourish? It had been about 12 or 13 years since I had been in executive leadership, leading a church as a senior pastor, and so many things had changed, and this was an even larger organization, and I just found myself saying, I can't wind up accepting this particular thing unless I have the power that I need to help this people flourish. I need wisdom, I need skills, I need expertise, and so therefore the elders gave me about a 6-month sabbatical because I said, so many things have changed, and if we're going to wind up being a missional church that we flourish for the sake of our community flourishing, I just have to read and think and study, and I have to figure some things out. And basically what I sat down asking is, how can we grow bigger in capacity, smaller in community, deeper in maturity, and wider in influence? I had to figure out how to do that, because if I didn't know how to do that, then I should not take the invitation to help you, because I did not have what it would take for you to flourish. So I just spent a lot of time working and processing on that. And not only that, but I was saying, so we have this wonderful team of staff. And how do I wind up, empowering them? How do I wind up getting them more resources so that we can work together collaboratively so that we can flourish? And then I started asking questions about authority. I mean, are certain staff in the right positions and roles? Are they authorized and positioned so they can maximize their talents and skills and love to the best possibility? And so we started making some arrangements. And I was thinking, are there future hires that we're going to need so that we can flourish the way, and do I have the ability to discern those people and get those people and move them into the right positions? I mean, I just processed and prayed about all those kinds of things. And I said, and we're getting this new expanded facility. How are we going to use this? What's going to be the best way we can use it, not only for us to flourish here, but for us to help our community flourish? And I mean, those are the things I just wrestled with, because frankly, if I didn't have the ability to help you flourish, if that wasn't my deepest commitment, then I shouldn't be in this particular position. So by God's grace, I was able to wrestle through and say, yeah, that's my heart, to help the people right here that I love flourish so much. That's what leaders always do. They just want to help people flourish. I met a guy last year, but I've gotten to know him better this year. And this is also a pastor. So I'm just telling another pastor story. But he was living in another country, and in his denomination, there was one church that had once been a very prominent church, but things had changed so much, and the church was in serious decline and decay, diminishment. And basically, they wound up saying to him, hey, we know just how much you have going for you. Would you go and help these people die with dignity? Just help them close up the doors. Help them bring an end to this particular local church. They had their run, it was wonderful, but they're in such decline. We're going to send you to help them close and bring an end with dignity. And so my friend wound up going, but he said something about that task just didn't seem right. He said, well, God, if that's why you're sending me here for me to help them come to an end with dignity, I'll do that. But I'd like to have a shot at bringing life here. And so what he wound up doing is he said, I'm just going to do whatever I can to help them flourish. And apparently he was so good at it that by the time he left, it was the second largest church in their denomination. So you see, listen, I'm not about helping anybody come to an end. I'm about flourishing. That's what leaders do. No matter what position you are, no matter how high, no matter how small, leaders help people flourish. If that's at the core of your desire and heart, you are positioned for really, really good leadership. Okay, here's a second thing, and that is there's a nature that goes along with power and authority. And in one word, it is the word love, which is why we very strategically chose the word lead, love, and then serve in the way of Jesus. Power and authority is all about love. But in the beginning, it was a love that builds, creates, designs, advances, matures, ripens, improves, all these rich words that are full of development, full of potential, full of taking something from here to there, but always soaked and saturated with love. A couple years back, when we introduced the flourishing model of the living word, one of my friends, I love this guy, he's so full of love and energy, he so wants to help people flourish. He realized that this model of flourishing that we were unpacking and introducing for the church, he had a place at work where he said, wow, I think that the people where I work would really benefit from this thing called flourishing. And so what he started doing over the next number of months, he just said, I think I'm here at this secular workplace to help the people flourish. And I have some position of power and authority to do that. And so he started designing kind of new ways and new programs and new processes and new opportunities and new relationships where he just said, I'm here to help all of you flourish. And he's been doing that for a while now, just having a blast as his love propels him to help the people he works with flourish. Isn't that so cool? Can you imagine wherever you are, in your family, in your workplace, in your community, where your love is so strong that you are just bringing to bear resources that help people flourish? Because that's what love does. And because love wants to do that, love always wants to get better at doing what love does best. And so therefore we remain as these lifelong learners. Just God, help me get better and better at loving others, empowering, building, developing, creating others. The other day I was doing a ride on the Heritage Rail Trail, and I was out pretty early in the morning, so there weren't very many people on the trail, and so I'm cruising down south, and off in the distance I see, I became apparent that there was a mother and her daughter, and the daughter was pushing a stroller. And, I'm coming up and say, on your left, and, they turn and look, and it was real obvious it was mother, daughter, and grandchild. And I kept on cruising down the trail for, another half hour, and eventually I had to turn around and come on back, and so I'm coming back, and as I'm coming back, I'm seeing them, they're still walking, and I'm thinking, oh, wow, they're out for a good long walk, probably walking for several hours, and you could just tell that the mother and daughter were engaged in this. It must have been a delightful and deep conversation because they're smiling. I'm just thinking, so that's love in action. Mom with their daughter and grandchild, and mom doing what she can to bring the resources of love and nurture and encouragement and support and connection, and just spending hours together, just doing life together, kind of mentoring. That's love. That's leadership. That's love. Got talking to a woman this week, and she was telling me about some folks that she might be positioned to influence, and she just wants everything oozing out of her, just love to develop and empower and care for and take care of and improve. I mean, just her fundamental motive is love. Jesus, he comes to the disciples, and they had all had a long, dirty, dusty walk on unpaved roads, and they come in, and there's no servant girl to do the feet washing, and so they're all sitting down with dirty, stinky, smelly feet. None of those disciples have any even remote inclination to get up and get the water and towel and start washing the feet of their buddies. So Jesus does. Because that's what leaders do. They love and they serve, they meet needs. They take care of what needs to be taken care of. There's no job too big, there's no job too small for leadership love. You with me? There's no job too big, there's no job too small when love is your fundamental essence. And let me just throw one little word out from Ephesians, where Paul was talking about the relationship of husbands and wives, and he winds up coming along with this enormously high calling where he says, husbands, I want you to love your wives in the way that Christ loves the church. To serve her and to sacrifice for her, to make her all that she is meant to be. That is the essence of what husbands wind up doing for their wives. And it's what parents do for their kids. And it's what we just do for as many people as we can find. We love and serve them. It is the essence of leadership, to make others better and healthier. Are you with me? And therefore, there's one more thing. How do I become a leader who has that kind of purpose? And how do I become a leader who has that kind of nature of love? And very simply, you have to be a leader who is connected to the source of all flourishing, of all blessing, of all light, life, and love, and that is God himself. The creator God, maker of heaven and earth, the Lord Almighty, full of grace, mercy, and love. We have to be deeply connected to that God. And when we are connected to that God through prayer, like we spent 5 weeks talking about, just connected to God in prayer, things happen. So here's one of the reasons why we picked this little book here. Henry Nouwen winds up saying this, the discipline of prayer, through the discipline of prayer, Christian leaders have to learn to listen again and again to the voice of love, and to find there the wisdom and courage to address whatever issue presents itself to them. Dealing with the burning issues without being rooted in deep personal relationship with God, it just goes bad really fast, really deep. So therefore, Christian leaders, pray so you're connected to the source from whom all blessings flow. Pray so that you're connected to love, so love flows through you. Pray that you're connected to true power, so your power will be full of gentleness and kindness and goodness and all things beautiful. Be connected to the source, because if you're not connected to that source, you're going to find another source that you will connect to. And when you connect to something other than God, those sources are going to be really, really unhealthy. That's leadership. Power and authority that is used for the purpose of helping others flourish. It is infused and saturated with love and service, and it is so because it is connected to the God of heaven and earth. That's what we want to just explore for the next 40 days and try and help all of you get that purpose, that nature, and that source so you can make the kind of difference you want.